Today is Friday, June 26th, 2026. Welcome to This Week in Natural Refrigerants News, where we recap the top stories on naturalrefrigerants.com. This podcast is generated and read by artificial intelligence and may contain errors. We're your hosts, AT and MO, and the articles for today's podcast were organized by naturalrefrigerants.com's managing editor and written by its writers. You can find links to each article in the show notes. Today we're looking at some stories that show how natural refrigerants are really moving into these massive commercial spaces, starting with Buc-ee's down in Huber Heights, Ohio.
Right, so they just opened their first travel center using CO2 refrigeration, which is a huge deal. They actually went with 2 of the Hill Phoenix Flex mini transcritical units for this setup.
Yeah, and what's wild to me is just the raw economics behind it. Like, they paid, I think it was a 17% upfront premium over the legacy R448A system.
Exactly, a 17% premium, but they're projecting, 12% energy savings annually compared to the old setup.
Which, that pays for itself pretty fast when you think about the scale of a Buc-ee's. You're talking about a place that draws more people in a single weekend than, like, a Major League Baseball team does in a whole season.
Oh yeah, the foot traffic is just insane. And that massive volume is exactly why they demanded a strict 100% redundancy requirement for this installation.
Because if your cooling goes down with thousands of people in the store,
Wow.
It's just an absolute disaster for the business. So it's great seeing this hardware work at such a grueling scale. But, getting it deployed everywhere isn't always easy because of outdated safety codes.
Right, which takes us right into the regulatory friction we're seeing. There's a UL working group right now that's trying to update the ULCSA 60335-240 standard by 2028.
And the goal there is to raise the R290 charge limits for outdoor monoblock heat pumps to 4.94 kilograms, right?
Yeah, exactly, 4.94 kilograms. But hitting that 2028 timeline is definitely not a guarantee at this point.
No, not at all. The Environmental Investigation Agency is basically sounding the alarm right now, just pleading for more industry OEMs to actually join these negotiations.
Because if the manufacturers who actually build the systems aren't sitting at the table, the new safety standards just won't match the practical reality of what's needed to advance the propane market.
Right. Well, so we're fighting for higher limits on flammables. But let's look at a totally different approach, going completely refrigerant-free. Magnotherm just announced this new 125 kilowatt magnetic cooling setup called the Stellar system.
Yeah, the Stellar system. It sounds like science fiction, honestly, but it relies on the magnetocaloric effect using a lanthanum iron silicon material.
Which is just wild. You hit this specific metal with a magnetic field, the atoms align, and it physically heats up.
Right, and then you just vent that heat away. Then, the second you remove the magnetic field, the atoms scatter, the temperature drops dramatically, and you use that sudden chill to cool a water circuit. So there's no vapor compression cycle needed at all.
That is so fascinating. But to hit a massive industrial scale like 125 kilowatts, standard permanent magnets just aren't strong enough, right?
No, they're not. They're having to use superconducting magnets to hit that capacity, which is why it's still, largely in the development phase. They're actively seeking partners to help engineer that jump.
Well, while they figure out the superconducting magnets, let's look at someone doing immediate massive deployments right now. Because SEM Frigo just started up a 2.8 megawatt transcritical CO2 system for a global cosmetics company over in France.
Oh yeah, 2.8 megawatts. And what stands out there isn't just the sheer size, it's the heat reclaim specs. They're capturing waste heat from the cooling cycle to produce 700 kilowatts of domestic hot water at 85 degrees Celsius.
Oh, 85 degrees. So you're basically solving process cooling and high temp heating in one interconnected loop.
Exactly. You're not paying for that energy twice. It's a textbook example of why natural systems are just outcompeting legacy tech in these giant industrial settings.
Yeah, the efficiency compounding is just too good to ignore.
Yeah.
And actually, if we zoom out to see how these deployments are tracking regionally, Atmosphere just released their latest market report for Australia and New Zealand.
And the growth curve there is incredibly sharp. In Australia, retail outlets using CO2 jumped 21% just over the last year.
21% in a single year. That's huge.
It is. And it's heavily driven by corporate rollouts from big players, like Woolworths and Coles.
Right. And then New Zealand's retail sector saw a 4% increase, which doesn't sound quite as massive until you realize they've already achieved a 23% overall market penetration for transcritical CO2.
Yeah, a quarter of the market. They are deeply entrenched in the transition at this point.
It really is wild.
Right.
And it leaves you with an interesting thought to chew on. As we see CO2 dominating grocery and industrial at this scale, and propane limits expanding in HVAC. What happens to all the remaining legacy infrastructure when the technical talent pool completely shifts to natural systems? Like, who's even going to be left to fix the old stuff?
This is AT and MO, and this has been the Week in Natural Refrigerant News.